All right, chalo ji, bismillah. So let's begin with the MCQs finally now for this topic. And again, this collection of MCQs is from the very recent papers, including starting from October, November 2020, all the way back up to 2018. So let's try and exhaust the maximum of them as possible. Okay, so again, please ignore the numbering. It's 28, 29, 30, 31, then again 28, 29, 30, 31. Just ignore that, inshallah. You just need to understand what the MCQs are. I couldn't find time to edit just the numbering. Inshallah, we'll do that later. Okay, so the first question, which is MCQ number 8, says, which statement describes relationships in ecosystems? Okay. Carbohydrates are passed from decomposers to producers. Let's think about this option. I mean, carbohydrates are passed from decomposers to producers. Well, decomposers don't pass on anything to anything. They decompose. I mean, and they decompose the thing it's in its entirety. So they don't pass on carbohydrates. So that in and of itself is really absurd. So that's incorrect. Energy is passed from carnivores to herbivores. Well, we know that energy is passed, but there is a direction that it follows. It's not from carnivores to herbivores. It can be the other way around. So it does not go back into the ecosystem. The first in the order is herbivores, and then you can say carnivores. So again, that's incorrect. C, proteins are passed from primary consumers to producers. Now, uh, there are two aspects that are incorrect to this statement. Proteins are passed from primary. Well, relationship in the ecosystem is in terms of energy. Okay, so that's the first problem. Number two, even if you consider that to be correct, I mean, primary consumer to producer. A producer is supposed to be a plant, which is the first thing in the food chain anyway. So, I mean, it's from the producers that the energy is being passed on the primary consumers. So, again, this option is incorrect. So D has to be correct, which means carbohydrates are passed from producers to herbivores. Yes, glucose is the carbohydrate that's made from photosynthesis by the producers. So it's from producers to the herbivores. So D option is the correct answer. Okay, the next MCQ says, mealy bug are small insects that feed on crops such as mango and coffee. They damage the crops and reduce the yield and profits for farmers. Lace-wing insects and ladybird beetles both eat mealybugs. Which row shows the position of some of the organisms in the food chain? Okay, now what we can do is let's draw the food chain for us. So mealybugs are small insects that can feed on crops such as mango and coffee. So mango and coffee. Okay, so they are being consumed, both of them are being consumed by mealybug. Okay, so that's the trend that we can see from the first sentence. They damage the crops and reduce the yield and profits of farmers. Lacewing insects and ladybird beetles both eat mealybugs. Okay, so mealybug is eaten by lacewing, lacewing and ladybirds. Okay, so in such type of questions, it's your ability to form the food chain that is basically being assessed. Okay. Okay, so which row shows the position of some organisms? Clearly, I mean, if you identify from the options, B option is the option that looks suitable. For this, coffee, mango, coffee on the and then you have mealbugs, then you have lacewing. So the answer is clearly B. That was fairly simple. You know, this is the ability that he will test. He will give you sentences and words, and you need to figure out and make a food chain from that. Okay. The diagram shows the carbon cycle. What is process X? Okay. Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Okay, that must be CO2. Okay. And then fossil fuels, say arrow ja raha hai carbon dioxide, this should of course be burning of fossil fuels. Then animals, something is going from the animals into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. Now, which process does this? Of course, we know this is respiration. And also plants, they also respire. So of course, this is respiration. Okay, again, that was fairly simple. Three statements about the malarial parasites are listed. Okay, so it says three. अच्छा जी, कौन से हैं उन्हें बताना क्या है? Which methods can be used for controlling malaria? Okay, fair enough. Um, Insecticides are used to kill vectors. Well, yes. To control the malarial parasite, it's also advisable to kill the vectors, the mosquito, the female Anopheles mosquito, as we discussed. Netting is used to keep the vectors away. Yes. Preventing the mosquito from biting is also prevention of malaria. People taking drugs that stop the malarial pathogen developing. Yes, that is if the if the pathogen has entered, then you take quinine was the drug, if you remember that. So again, the answer is A. Okay, 32. What would be an undesirable feature of an insecticide? What is an insecticide? It's something that kills the insects. Okay. Undesirable. Okay. So it becomes more concentrated at each stage of food web. Okay, now this is something that we need to understand. There are some things which are non-biodegradable, which keep on consuming at each trophic level and they don't finish. And as you proceed in the food chains, they keep on depositing and they keep on increasing. Okay. So that's an undesirable feature of an insecticide. So the answer to this question is actually A. It becomes more concentrated at each stage of in the food web. Okay. So, and that's not good basically. And the word that we're using for them is, why are they being gathered? Because they're non-biodegradable, which means that they keep on accumulating, concentrating at each stage. They have to be in. Let's look at the other options, why they're incorrect. It breaks down within a few months. No, it doesn't. That's why we're calling it as non-biodegradable. It destroys one particular insect only. Well, no, insecticide is general. It will kill many insects. It destroys immature forms of insects. No, it can kill both the mature and the immature. So again, all of these three options are incorrect. And the undesirable feature is A. Okay, moving on. The diagram shows a food web of organisms found in a pond. Okay, so you can clearly see it's a mixture of many food chains, interlinked food chains. Which organism is both a herbivore? Okay, sorry for that. Which organism is both a herbivore and a carnivore? Okay, this is interesting once again. So they can herbivore by definition we know is a plant consumer. So or a producer consumer. Now you can clearly see that we don't have a plant at the start of the food chain. We have algae. Now this is one of those exceptions in which producers can be other than plants. A producer by definition is the one that produces its own food. So you have blue-green algae that does photosynthesize. So therefore algae is the producer and it is being consumed by the following two, the Daphnia and the Paramecium. Okay, so we can clearly see that the herbivore is either of these two, or both of these two actually, not either of these two, both of these two. Now, okay, there's a third arrow that's coming out of the algae apart from these two arrows, and that is mosquito larva. So the mosquito larva also happens to be a herbivore. Why? Because it's directly consuming the algae. Okay, so we've identified three herbivores. Let me let me color that with a different color. You have Paramecium, you have mosquito larva. If you consider this, then you have Daphnia. Okay. Now the question is, which organism is both a herbivore and a carnivore? A carnivore is just what's a carnivore? If you think about it, carnivore by definition is the one that is consuming animal. Okay, so I mean, think about it. Mosquito को अगर आप यहाँ से देखें तो it's also consuming paramecium here. So, but paramecium and Daphnia, they're not consuming any other animal apart from grass. So clearly the answer is C. Okay. 30, the diagram shows the nitrogen cycle. Okay, which stage is carried out by nitrifying bacteria? Again, let's quickly revise the three types of bacteria that we saw. Number one was nitrogen fixing bacteria. Number two was nitrifying bacteria. And number three were denitrifying bacteria. Sorry for bad spellings. which stage is carried out by nitrifying bacteria. Now we know that nitrifying bacteria, they do nitrification, which is basically converting ammonium ions into nitrate and nitrite ions. So if we look at the options, clearly ammonium compounds in the soil being converted into nitrates. So looks like B. Okay. Why not C? Nitrates in the soil, nitrogen in the air. C is denitrification. What is D? Nitrogen in the air into nitrogen compounds in the plants. That's nitrogen fixation. Okay. What is A? Nitrogen compounds in the dead matter into ammonium compounds. That's clearly none of these three. So the answer is B. Okay. The answer is B. Okay. All right. So the next question, 28. The flow of energy in ecosystems is non-cyclic. What is the main reason for this? Okay, that's interesting. Let's look at all of the options. Let me change the color. I'm not liking this. Let's do it green. Okay. Actually, the flow of energy is non-cyclic. We know the phenomenon of non-cyclic energy flow. We need to tell the main reason. Let's look at option A. Energy can be transferred back to its original source. No, that's not the case. I mean, it doesn't return back to the sun. That's what makes it non-cyclic. B, energy is not transferred from living things to their environment. Well, it does. It does. For example, living things, they respire, they release energy. Remember, I said 90% is lost. So again, that's incorrect. Energy is only transferred from smaller to larger organisms. Well, not necessarily. I mean, we may assume that that's the case, but that's not necessarily the case. It can be from larger to smaller. Energy is transferred from living organisms as heat. Yes, exactly. As I said, when they respire, that they give out heat, and that's one of the major factors that is basically causing the energy to be lost. So the answer is D. Okay, next MCQ. The diagram shows a food chain. Grasses, zebras, lions, and fleas. Which pyramid of numbers would represent this food chain? Okay, this is a very interesting question. Grasses. Look at this. That's plural, isn't it? Zebras, lions, and fleas. Now, this question is unusual because usually for a question that has to do with pyramid of numbers, sorry, will usually involve diagrams. But I mean, let's try and see. So quickly, if you excuse me, recall, you will remember that pyramid of numbers is supposed to represent a pyramid, the width of which is representing the number. Okay, so let's look at all of the options, what looks plausible. So for sure, we know that the order is the same: producer, then the primary consumer, then the secondary consumer, and then the tertiary consumer. Okay, so the order is the same for all. That's for sure. So grasses, can they be more than the zebras? Yes. I mean, think about it. I mean, use your common sense. एक grassy areas पे कितने zebras होंगे? I mean, imagine counting the number of grass. Okay, I mean, of course, grass will be way more than the zebras. So for us to look at option C, the grass being lesser than zebras, this looks absurd. So that's incorrect. I mean, this doesn't make sense. Okay. Well, D looks like a beautiful pyramid. I mean, we can say that it's the case. Let's look at option B. Okay, you have grasses. That looks good. Even this looks good. Even this looks good for the first. This is for the individual blocks. Okay. Now the second is zebras. Okay, I mean, in an ecosystem, literally, will we have only one or two, maybe zebras? I mean, no, that's kind of unlikely. So this looks problematic. This looks problematic. Okay. What about lions? Usually, I mean, as you're going above the food chain, the number of organisms, they tend to reduce. I'm going to repeat what I said. This is a very important statement. As you are proceeding along the food chain, the number of animals, of organisms, they usually decrease. And the reason is because the energy is being constantly lost. Okay. So definitely for sure, the lions will be lesser than the zebra. So again, that becomes really problematic for this particular bar. So we rule out option B. Okay, I mean, this looks correct, and even this looks correct. So we're confused between option A and option D. What's the fourth thing? Fleas. Okay, there. What's the size of the fleas in comparison to the lines? It's very small, and maybe hundreds and hundreds of fleas would be over the skin of one lion. So of course their number will outnumber all of the, maybe even the grass, or maybe they're equal to the grass. I mean, imagine the size of the fleas. So this looks plausible. Okay, so the answer is actually A. Okay, the option was correct for the first three bars, but then that was a problem. Okay, by the way, the D diagram is going to be true if you're talking about the pyramid of biomass. Okay, MCQ number 30. That was a good question. Um, the diagram shows parts of the nitrogen cycle. Which arrow represents the action of root nodule bacteria of leguminous plants? Okay, so we know for sure that root nodules, they contain nitrogen fixing bacteria, which convert the atmospheric nitrogen into ammonium ions. Okay, so look at the arrows and tell me what's the possible option. Nitrogen gas being converted into nitrogen containing green plants. Of course, when the plant will consume ammonia in the form of nitrates, that's how it's going to be. So A looks plausible. Let's look at option D, nitrates into D. Well, I mean, nitrogen, leguminous plants have to do with nitrogen fixation, and that is the notion of the gaseous nitrogen being converted. So the starting point is not nitrates, so that's incorrect. Nitrites to nitrates, no, that's really not what nitrogen fixation is. Decaying remains into ammonium compounds, no. So the only option that we're left with, and which looks plausible, is option A. Okay. Challenge MCQ number 31. Which row matches a method of controlling malaria with the explanation of how this method works? Okay. So let's look at all of the options. Method, covering windows with netting. Okay. Explanation, kills the mosquitoes. No. Covering them with a net won't kill them. It will just prevent them from biting you. So again, that's incorrect. That's incorrect. Okay, let me mark that with a blue. Spraying oils on rivers kills mosquito larvae. Yes, that looks good because if you remember, I said the larvae, they need to breathe oxygen. They need oxygen, which will come from the atmosphere. It will dissolve in the water body. But if you're forming a layer of oil on the water body, that prevents oxygen from getting inside the water, eventually killing. So looks good. Let's look at C and D why they're incorrect. Taking anti-malarial drugs stops mosquito from biting. No. Taking anti-malarial drugs will kill the plasmodium and won't stop the mosquito bites. Okay. And then you have, what do you have? So that's incorrect for sure. And then you have D, which is using insecticides kills malarial parasites. Well, no, they're supposed to kill insects, not pathogens, okay? So that's also incorrect. So 31 is for sure B. चलिए आगे चलते हैं. 32. Areas of tropical rainforests are often cut down and cleared. After cutting down the trees, the areas are normally burnt. What are the effects of this act? Of course, if something is being burnt, you're adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. For sure, the carbon dioxide increases, so we rule out option A and B because they say it decreases. Number of variety of species. Of course, if you're increasing the pollution, that's detrimental for health and it may kill some organisms. Of course, they decrease. Okay, so both of them happen to be correct. They look same. Soil stability. Soil stability. Tropical forests are cut down. Okay, so deforestation causes loss of soil stability. So it decreases. The answer is C. Okay. 28. The diagram shows the diagram shows a food. Oh my goodness, मैंने OneNote पे नहीं किया. Oh my goodness, you know. चलिए मैं आपको वैसे PDF भेज दूँगा इंशाल्लाह वो देखिए. Actually, I'm doing of working on them, so I was wondering if this could be saved. Subhanallah, forgot. चलिए कोई बात नहीं. قدر الله. 28. Okay. The diagram shows a food chain. Which group of organisms is missing from the food chain? Aquatic plant, tadpole, small fish, bird. Good. This is a lovely question. Which group of organisms is missing from this food chain? Well, Carnivores, no. A bird is a carnivore, it's eating small fish. We rule out this. Herbivore, well, we have tadpole consuming aquatic plant. That's also incorrect. Producers, well, you have producers. So the only option that you're left with is decomposers. Now remember, we don't usually draw decomposers, but they're technically part of the food chain because they're technically, why don't we draw them? Because they're consuming all of the organisms when they die in terms of decomposition. So usually we don't represent them as such, but they're part of the food chain. Okay, right, 29. Okay, insects feed on trees' leaves. The insects are eaten by small birds that are prey of larger birds. Let's count the number of things that we have. Insects, tree leaves, small birds, large birds. So let's make a food chain for this. Insects feed on trees' leaves. So you have the tree leaves, okay, which are being fed. They're eating, the insects are eating them. Okay, and then insects are eating being with small birds, and small birds are being eaten by large birds. Okay, now remember the rule. The rule is the number, pyramid of numbers, it represents the number. Okay, so tree leaves. If okay, tree leaves. Now insects feed on a tree's leaf. Okay, so for the tree, remember, it is always supposed, the tree is, it is, does the word tree represent trees? Yeah, plural, it's an apostrophe, which means it's single tree. So clearly B and C are correct. Okay, and A and D galat ho jate hain because this is a very big bar. That's a misrepresentation of the number. We're just talking about one tree. Okay, so tree ke baad insects hain. If you compare the number, if you compare the size of insects, small birds and large birds, of course the insects are very small and they're usually very large in number. So what looks appropriate definitely is this bar, followed by small birds and then followed by large birds. So therefore the answer is C. Okay. All right, coming back, MCQ number 28. MCQ number 28. ऊपर कौन सा था? 29. Then we have 28. Okay, 29, 28. Great. That was C. Yep. Okay. Acha ji. And now, 4 students are studying pond ecosystem on a bright sunny day. They see the underwater plants giving off bubbles. What is the explanation of this observation? Okay, let's look at all of the options one by one. The bubbles are carbon dioxide. No, no, no. The bubbles, on a sunny day, a plant will photosynthesize, giving off oxygen. Okay, so yeah, so it can't be carbon dioxide. Can be because of respiration. Like in the option says, the bubbles are carbon dioxide produced during photosynthesis. No, 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 no. It's oxygen that is being produced during photosynthesis. So we rule out this option. The bubbles are carbon dioxide. The plants are getting their energy for photosynthesis from respiration. No, it's this part of the statement that's incorrect, from photosynthesis. So that's incorrect. C, the bubbles are oxygen produced, okay, during photosynthesis, okay. The plants are getting their energy from the sun. Excellent. Good. I'm sorry, B option में मैंने the plants are getting the energy photosynthesis from respiration. ये photosynthesis भी नहीं होगा, ये sun से ही होगा. I'm sorry, I misquoted that. So C looks a plausible option. Let's look at why D is incorrect. The bubbles are oxygen. The plant are getting their energy from photosynthesis, from minerals absorbed through. No, no, no. It's not from minerals, it's from the sun. So the answer is C. Okay. Okay, MCQ number 29. The diagram shows a food web. What is the food chain in this food web? Okay. एक तो बहुत simple सी लग आप देख apparently you would look at this to be the food chain, but that's the arrow. That's not a food chain. Okay, so I mean we'll have to rub that. The arrow direction is opposite, so we don't think that's. So let's try and trace some of them. So you have seeds. You have seeds about mouse, and then you have praying mat. So that's the arrow that's going. praying mantis, and then you have snake. Okay, that's one that I've identified. So let's see. Let's look at the options. Fleas, say mouse. From the fleas, let me use a different color for all of the options. So for A, we're using orange. Let me highlight that orange. So fleas to mouse. No, no, no. It's actually incorrect because the it's the fleas is consuming the mouse and not otherwise. So that's incorrect. Grass to seeds. No, इसमें तो कोई arrow ही नहीं है. That's incorrect. Hawk to snake. Hawk to snake. No, no. If it was hawk to snake, then the arrow would have been this. Seeds to mouse to praying mantis to snake. Seeds to mouse to praying mantis to snake. That's the one that I identified. So the answer is D. Okay. All right. MCQ number 30, very quickly. Some bacteria survive best in waterlogged soils where they're able to obtain oxygen for respiration by breaking down nitrates. Nitrogen gas is released as a waste product. To which type of bacteria does this description apply? Okay, that's easy. I mean, some bacteria survive best in waterlogged soils. They're able to obtain oxygen by breaking down nitrates, and nitrogen gas is released. So nitrates to nitrogen gas is denitrification. It's denitrifying bacteria. Okay, let's look at the one last MCQ. How many times must the uninfected mosquito feed on human blood to transmit the uninfected hai? Okay, uninfected hai, so no plasmodium will be transferred from the mosquito to the human blood. Okay, so if it bites a human blood, it won't transfer parasite to human population. If it is feeding on a person which is infected and then it rebites a person, then it will. So it has to be at least twice. ये मैंने transmission वाला explain किया था आपको बड़ी detail में. So alhamdulillah, this is how the MCQs basically they're there. कुछ थोड़े से MCQs रह गए. इंशाल्लाह ये मैं document और इसकी की आपके साथ share कर दूँगा. So inshallah, tomorrow we will be starting with our new topic. Alhamdulillah, that's plant reproduction. Jazakallah khairan. See you tomorrow, same time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.